So, hello everyone, thank you for tuning in today. I'm Natalie Rodriguez, and I will be presenting on the Education Evaluation Guide I created for my client, Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. I want to begin by giving some background. The National Estuarine Research Reserve System, or NERS for short, is a partnership between NOAA and the coastal states to study and protect vital coastal and estuarine resources. The mission of the reserves is to practice and promote coastal and estuarine stewardship through innovative research and education using a system of protected areas. Can you guys see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, excuse me. Yeah, so using a system of protected areas. Switching gears a little bit, evaluation is the systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of the information about activities and outcomes of a program with the purpose of making judgments about what the program is and improving it. Evaluation is necessary in understanding how much students are truly absorbing, providing evidence to stakeholders, improving programming, and informing upon best teaching practices. So to that end, Rookery Bay's education program has been up and running for 5 years, and this will be their first evaluation. Yay! Just to orient us for a moment, Rookery Bay is located in Southwest Florida, about 2 hours west of Miami if you're driving. You can kind of tell in this picture, but development runs right up against the reserve. If you're familiar at all with the area, this is Marco Island, full of resorts and manicured lawns. And then up here is Naples, which is just a little bit south of Fort Myers. This area is important as it is the exit point of many rivers and streams into the Gulf of Mexico and home to one of the few undisturbed mangrove forests in the United States. Some history. In the 1960s, with increased farming and construction, Collier County residents started to notice that their pristine bays and estuaries were showing the effects of development upstream. Around this time, a highway was proposed that would go right through Rookery Bay. The Collier County Conservancy, the National Audubon Society, and the Nature Conservancy galvanized community support that resulted in $600,000 being raised to buy the land that would have been otherwise destroyed. This land ultimately became Rookery Bay. Additionally, thousands of years ago, this area was inhabited by Calusa Indians. Since 1978, the reserve has cataloged more than 200 artifacts, which include shell tools, shell net weights, and carved bones. Some of these cataloged artifacts can be found in an online database too. Needless to say, this area is of extreme ecological and cultural importance to the community. Additionally, the reserve spans 110,000 acres and is managed by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection in partnership with NOAA and Florida International University. Their mission is to practice and promote stewardship of coasts and estuaries through innovative research, education, and training using a place-based system of protected areas. Additional resources Rookery Bay provides include boat and kayak tours, geocaching, boardwalk and cleared nature trails, lectures and classes, receptions and art exhibits, festivals, collaborative research opportunities, interactive exhibits at the Environmental Learning Center, and of course, extensive education programming. In these pictures here we have Rookery Bay Environmental Learning Center, where they have those interactive exhibits and just touch tanks and things like that. Over here on the top right are Rookery Bay and community members picking up after a hurricane. In the middle, there's some beach shots and some little turtle hatchlings. And at the bottom is some piney scrub forest that also is within Rookery Bay. So many different ecosystems at play here. So more on that education programming. Through hands-on field trips, students get to experience an unparalleled living classroom, if you will. Additional educational offerings include homeschool trips and an annual Teachers on the Estuary workshop. For the purposes of this project, I focused on the Elementary Estuaries Explorers program, middle school survivors, and high school field-based estuarine studies program. Estuary Explorers involves basic management or mangrove and oyster reef ecosystem activities, classroom investigations of plankton, and water quality testing at the Rookery Bay Environmental Learning Center. Middle school survivors are exposed to critical thinking strategies, high-level questioning, and scientific techniques. Concepts include ecology, energy transfer, food webs, diversity, adaptation, disturbances, and data interpretation. Field-based estuarine studies are conducted on a vessel and are well suited for students in marine biology, environmental science, oceanography, general biology, chemistry classes, and more. Students get to do a bottom trawl and a plankton tow. some samples are brought back to the lab for additional activities. So here on the left, we see estuary explorers. Those are some elementary schoolers getting to look at some invertebrates in that touch tank. In the middle, we have middle school survivors at Rookery Base Field Station in an outdoor setting at a tank, also looking at some more invertebrates. And then on the right, we have some high schoolers doing that trawl. This brings us back to the evaluation guide. Planning an evaluation is not really a linear process, but more of a cycle. This diagram is from Mira, which offers extensive resources on evaluation. For the purposes of this project, I only focused on phase 1 and 2, as 3 encompasses the actual data collection, analysis, and reporting, of which I will not be a part. So phase 1 and phase 2, just making the guide. The guide includes instructions on collecting, analyzing, and reporting, but I will not be doing that. Laid out here are the steps I went through to construct an evaluation guide for Rookery Bay that contains the instructions from collecting the data to analyzing and reporting it. For collection, we landed on a survey as our tool. The logic model, evaluation review, and informational interviews on the left helped inform on a pilot survey, which I then took to Rookery Bay and performed user testing and an expert review on to refine it. So first up, we have the logic models. Logic models help illustrate the rationale behind a program. Its purpose is to demonstrate the relationship between the resources you invest, or the inputs, the activities you carry out, outputs, and the benefits you expect, outcomes. Each of the 3 education specialists at Rookery Bay completed a logic model for their grade level, which led to the determination of what needed to be evaluated and what types of questions we wanted the evaluation to answer. These logic models resulted in the decision to pursue an outcome-based evaluation. Outcome-based evaluations are concerned with enhanced learning, such as increased knowledge or improvements of perception, attitude, or skills, or improved conditions. So for example, increased ecological literacy. From the logic models, Rookery Bay education specialists desired to see increased knowledge of estuarine systems and processes, as well as increased interest in marine science and stewardship. Next up was an evaluation review. 11 already completed evaluations were selected from the Mira website library based on similarity to Rookery Bay's program, which is environmental education, evaluation type, which was outcome-based, and audience, primary and secondary school. The review served to identify a common evaluation tool and design. The evaluation review resulted in the selection of a quantitative survey or questionnaire as the instrument of measure. These tools can gauge knowledge, attitude, behavior, and values and can be analyzed and will be analyzed using descriptive statistics. Next, the last piece of our background process was informational interviews. 6 education specialists at Florida, Alabama, Texas, and Puerto Rico NEARS were contacted. Of those, I received 3 interviews from reserves depicted here with gold stars, and the little house there is Rookery Bay. Informal interviews were completed on advice, experience, or desires related to evaluations at for their programs. The information they provided further helped define Rookery Bay's evaluation. A retrospective post-only survey was decided as the way to go based on experience and research. A retrospective survey's value is in its conduciveness to evaluating short programs, in this case a 4-hour day trip. More common pre-post tests are not as useful evaluating single day or less programs, as taking these too close together could bias post-experience responses. A retrospective survey would be the best course of action, according to the NEARS education specialist informed opinions and research. And this clipping here is just showing what those types of questions may look like. So on the left, we have before this experience, rate your interest in marine science. And then after having this experience, how interesting do you find marine science? Also worth mentioning limitations in conducting these interviews was these took place last fall, which we were coming off of hurricane season. So some reserves staff were caught up in hurricane related duties, cleaning up and things. So after the pilot survey was constructed, I traveled down to Rookery Bay to do user testing. User testing yielded much insight into survey design. The purpose of user testing was to find if students were able to navigate and comprehend survey testing. So purely comprehension, not their answers or any demographics. Feedback only served to inform on a future version of the survey. Individuals' answers were not compared against one another. There were 2 field trip sessions of each program that took place between November 13th and 22nd last fall. At the end of their field trip sessions, each group of students ended together either outside or in a classroom. The entire class was then split into groups of about 10. Once paper surveys were distributed, a consistent introductory script was read, and any questions they had were answered. One trained moderator sat with each student group, and using the concurrent think aloud method, recorded comments, behaviors, and/or questions as they worked through the survey together. Moderators were volunteers, Rookery Bay staff, myself, and any teachers that were able to join in. Students also received a blank comment sheet as seen here on the right, with space to write thoughts on each question if they preferred not to speak out loud. This technique allowed participants to offer real-time feedback and encourage a stream of consciousness as they work through an issue, be it spelling, grammar, question structure, etc. So that helped with the shy kids. Combined moderator and student feedback was analyzed to determine majority impressions of each question based on overarching themes and patterns. This data was used to help shape edits moving forward. Examples of feedback, so positive or negative. So a negative would be, this question was too long, too confusing, I didn't understand the directions, it wasn't clear. And a positive would be like, I really like the emojis, let's do more emojis. Which was real feedback. Some limitations of the user testing was that it's even November in Florida, upper 80s, it's very hot. Sometimes the kids are tired or hungry, hangry, and they are kids. So sometimes when you give them instructions, they still don't listen. And some of them wanted to breeze through the survey and not go question by question as we had wanted to. Additionally, it rained on one of our middle school field trip days and we were unable to do user testing on that group. Last but not least were expert reviews. Unstructured interviews with Rookery Bay education staff were used to gather feedback on perceived usability, efficiency, and effectiveness of the student surveys. I met with each staff member separately and reviewed the survey respective to grade level. Staff voiced thoughts and/or wrote them down on a physical copy as the moderator, me, did the same as we went down question to question. This information even further refined the surveys. Some limitations to this part, the expert review, was that we met during the week I was there for user testing. So for some of those meetings, the teachers had already been through user testing and seen what questions the students maybe struggled with. So they had a little bit of bias coming in and knowing what students were going to struggle with. But that was, I think, minor. So the guide itself is still under construction, but contains data collection, analysis, and reporting instruction along with the survey instruments themselves. This evaluation contributes to the larger need of increasing efficacy and efficiency of environmental education programs in the NEARS network to continue the conservation of our coasts. These programs build knowledge, but also create a new generation of stewards. My recommendations are to perform evaluation regularly and systematically. Don't let it sit on the shelf, it won't work. This data is for adaptive management, and we should strive to always improve programming. And to update the survey as the program is updated, just to keep track of that. Additionally, for some, evaluation is a scary word. Sometimes as soon as people hear that word, they get their backs up and feel like they are going to be evaluated, hence judged. It gets personal very easily. It may be wise to appoint someone outside of the field trip circle to orchestrate the evaluation to avoid any bias there. So I'd like to thank my advisors, Nikki and Grant, along with the entire Rookery Bay education staff, Sarah, Savannah, Dita, Janine. I could not have done it without you guys, and I have so enjoyed this experience. And additionally, thank you to the entire NEARS network who've provided invaluable feedback. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. We have 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has questions, they can send them to me via the moderator chat, and I'll be happy to read them. All right, we've got a question from Lisa Campbell. Lisa asks, does environmental education literature have any guidance on social desirability bias for kids in groups with schoolmates? So how likely they are to answer a survey in a way that they think their friends might? Is there a way to test that?
Definitely. Social desirability bias is very real, and I think kids and adults as well. And I think maybe we observed some of that in user testing, and it would be interesting to, if we did it again, to really pay attention to that. When these surveys are going to actually be done, I think the kids will be sitting by themselves, and hopefully that'll avoid some of that social desirability bias. But there is definitely a lot of literature on that, and it's something to be wary of.
Thank you, Natalie. We have another question from Grant Murray.
Mhm.
He says, thank you, Natalie. Any idea when Rookery Bay is going to start using the new tools?
If we're lucky and we can get kids back to Rookery and everyone back into society next fall when programming resumes. It runs alongside the school year, so it'll be, fall, spring.
Great, thank you, Natalie. Natalie, we have a question from Audrey.
Okay.
Audrey asks, did you experience any red tide while you were in Florida, and did it impact the students' perceptions of the experience? Also, how many students were in each group?
So to the red tide question, actually, yes, once on the field-based estuary explorers class when we're on the vessel, when traveling through the estuary, it kind of looks like this picture here, where there's just mangroves all around you. We did experience red tide, which even though I grew up in Florida, I'd never experienced before, but everyone on the boat kind of started clearing their throats at the same time and started coughing a little bit. And the captain was like, yep, that's the red tide. And I was like, that's wild. I don't think that it impacted their experience very much. All of these kids on that field trip were from the area, so maybe they had experienced it before, or it was pretty mild, so I don't know that it was too bad. And then we there was about 25 to 30 kids per field trip group times 2, so we tried to get about 60 students to do the user testing for each grade level.
Thank you, Natalie. Do you have any more questions? Oh. Oh, Liz is telling me she sent a question, but I don't think I've seen it. Let me see if I can find it. Liz, I don't think I'm seeing your question. Do you want to send it to me again? Oh, here it is. Okay, so great job, Natalie. Was there any bias toward positive answers? Is a 5-point scale large enough to see differences?
Because we were just looking at mostly their comments and moderator, I didn't go through and quantify what their answers were on those scales. I think there is the possibility of that, but I would have to look more closely at all of those sheets to get more into that. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. And if we don't see any more questions pop up, I think that we'll go ahead and take a break until 1:35. We have a group presentation coming up with Lauren Mariolis and Catherine Morse. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you.